So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
The craziest thing that ever happened to me at a show is that someone threw a bottle at me.
Good morning. It's Friday, Fireman Friday, May the 2nd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and 3,000 degrees. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now the headlines.
It's great to see so many familiar faces I've had a chance to get to know over a number of years as we gather this morning to continue our celebration of President Trump's unprecedented and historic first 100 days in office, what are without doubt the greatest 100 days to begin any American presidency in the history of this nation. This week you've heard about the historic actions President Trump has taken to secure our homeland, to secure our sovereignty, to secure our economy and our supply chains and our industrial base. Today, you're also going to hear from me about what President Trump has done to secure our values, our culture, and our way of life from the unwavering assault from the radical left and the communists and the Democrat Party. One of the most significant crises that President Trump inherited upon taking office was the wave of racial discrimination, so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that have taken over both public sector and private sector entities all across the United States of America. Perhaps the most dramatic example of this is that our air traffic controllers were being hired and promoted based on race and gender, not their ability to conduct our nation's air traffic. I would estimate that probably 90% of Americans would agree with the statement that airline safety should be based on your ability to keep airline safety jobs should be based on your ability to keep planes landing and taking off and flying safely, not on what demographic box you check.
And that was the headlines. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the political corner.
We're bringing back religion in our country, and we're bringing it back quickly and strongly. Because for America to be a great nation, we must always be one nation under God, a phrase that they would like to get rid of, the radical left. But Ben, I don't think we're going to let them get rid of that, right? We're not letting them get rid of that.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Patriotic Short.
They came to General Secretary Gorbachev, and they told him there was a woman in the Kremlin. She wouldn't leave unless she could see him. So he said, well, bring her in. And they brought her in. And he said, old mother, what is it? What? She said, I have a question. He said, all right. She said, was communism invented by a politician or a scientist? Well, he said, a politician. She said, that explains it. A scientist would have tried it on mice first.
And that was the Patriotic Short. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of motivation.
Many of you, you're tired, or you're afraid, or you're anxious, or you're disappointed because the very thing that you've hoped for, the very thing that you have fought for has not happened, and you feel ready to give up in this moment.
It's lonely. You will be laughed at. People will call you crazy. You will be misunderstood.
It's going to get rough. It's going to be very challenging. Whenever you decide that you want to grow, whenever you decide that you want to go to another level, all hell will break loose. That goes with it. That goes with the territory. That when you want to grow, when you want to achieve, when you want to experience more, everything that can happen will happen.
In the middle of all that chaos, you got to remember that it's those low moments that will define who you really are.
The true character of a person is shown when your back is up against the wall. These are the moments that separate the successful from everybody else.
You know what you got to do to get to paradise? You got to fight like fucking hell to get to fucking paradise. Paradise starts in hell. So the ones that can fight, the ones that come back, those are the ones that succeed.
See, whenever you decide you want to go to another level, you've got to fasten your psychological, your mental, and your spiritual seatbelt, because you're going to experience some turbulence when you're going up. And some of you are already experiencing that turbulence. Don't be frightened by that. You've got to go through this phase here. This is how you grow. This is how you develop. See, life is like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes things go well, and sometimes they don't go well. But in the down moments, that's when you discover who you are. In this prosperous time, you put it in your pocket. In the lean times, you put it in your heart.
This is necessary for you to get where you want to go. And if you quit, if you falter, if you stop, all of the pain will be for nothing. You cannot get to success without suffering, sweating, sacrificing, staying locked in and fighting your way through tears and trials and tests. But many of you think that greatness goes on sale, but true quality never goes on sale. It costs what it costs, and you gotta pay the price.
There are no discounts to success. Only grind, only perseverance, only sweat, blood, and tears. It ain't no shame in thinking about quit. It ain't no shame in getting tired. But the trick is, don't let that thought become a reality. Say to yourself, I gotta rethink it and get this thought out of my mind. Why? Because the shame is in quit.
And I'm telling you, I know you're in a storm, and I know it hurts, and I know you don't want to take it anymore. The ship is being overthrown with water right now. Your family seems like it's drowning at this moment. Your dreams look like you're seeing them from underwater. Whatever storm you found yourself in today, don't give up. You have not seen the best days of your life yet.
As you step into it, awkward and uncomfortable, as you move toward it, as you keep moving toward it, as you keep believing, keep trusting, keep coming, keep digging, keep going, keep flowing, keep showing up.
Just keep holding on with everything floating around you. Keep holding on to the peace that you got.
See, there's some people in this room right now that you need to hear this loud and clear. You need to get this in your spirit, because I don't know what you're walking through, but some of you right now, you are in a tough season. An event has happened, and something's happened, and maybe you have failed. But I want to remind you that failure is not final, it's formative. It is part of the process. It's part of the journey. Your failure matters as much as your success. How do you think you're going to grow if you don't ever fail? Yet some of you have failed, and you have decided, well, guess what? I'm a failure. No, failure is an event. It is never a person. Failure is actually fuel for your future. The way that you grow, the way that you advance. You have to fail in order to succeed.
If you do not give up, if you fight back, you can beat it. I know you have that warrior inside. And now I just need you to activate it. This thing will not beat you. You might be one phone call away. You might be one opportunity away. You might be 1 second away from your entire life blowing up. And you will never ever know if this was your moment, if this was your destiny, if this was your time. If you quit, so don't you ever give up on me. You keep fighting and you keep striving.
I don't care what it is. I don't care how many times you've had to cry yourself to sleep. I don't care how difficult it is. Don't you dare give up now. Because whatever is over you defines you. And whatever defines you limits you. You better put some strength in your back, plant your feet, square your shoulders, and stand up to it.
Stand when it's uncertain. Stand when it doesn't feel good. Stand when it's controversial. Stand when it doesn't seem to be happening. Stand on what you know when you can't trust what you see.
Don't you dare sit down. Don't you dare crumble under the weight of it. Don't you dare give in because of the nature of it. Don't you dare go home and raise the white flag of surrender. This is not your season to die. This is not your season to quit. There's joy, there's peace, there's breakthrough, but you'll never see it if you don't stand up to it.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Daily Stoic.
When you feel lazy, anything that must yet be done, virtue can do with courage and promptness. For anyone would call it a sign of foolishness for one to undertake a task with a lazy and begrudging spirit, or to push the body in one direction and the mind in another, to be torn apart by wildly divergent impulses. Seneca, Moral Letters, 31.b through 32. If you start something and right away feel yourself getting lazy and irritated, first ask yourself, why am I doing this? If it really is a necessity, ask yourself, what's behind my reluctance, fear, spite, fatigue? Don't forge ahead hoping that someone will come along and relieve you of this task you don't want to do, or that someone else will suddenly explain why what you're doing matters. Don't be the person who says yes with their mouth, but no with their actions. Steve Jobs told Businessweek in 2005, only midway through Apple's stunning rise to becoming one of the world's most valuable companies, quality is much better than quantity. One home run is much better than 2 doubles.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now...
Hey, my friends, there's breaking news in the Catholic world today in the United States. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco, the Archbishop of Nancy Pelosi, has come out after she told the National Catholic Reporter that she indeed does receive Holy Communion, despite his ban on her from receiving such because of her pro-abortion stance. Archbishop Cordileone was responded to say, basically, pray for her with me, pray for her conversion, also pleading with her once again to speak with him about the issue. And remember, he tried for a decade to speak with her about it before he made the ban. So let's pray again for Archbishop Cordileone and for the conversion of Nancy Pelosi.
And that was Archbishop Cordileone. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, there's only one institution that can arrogate to itself the power legally to trade by means of rubber checks, the government. And it is the only institution that can mortgage your future without your knowledge or consent. Government securities and paper money are promissory notes on future tax receipts, i.e. on your future production, unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter Egalitarianism and Inflation from the book Philosophy, Who Needs It? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, under gaslighting, we have self-censoring and David Parkman.
So last week I did this story where I admitted that I had been self-censoring on some issues for a while on the program. And I explained it's not for reasons of monetization. It has nothing to do with that. It's because there are topics that for my mostly left-wing audience become so toxic and vitriolic that I question the value in general of diving into them. And I talked about how I will... it became very clear that any criticism that I would make of any of the members of the squad, for example, would be met with allegations of racism. So I stopped doing those critiques. Talking about Venezuela in anything but glowing terms would get me just slammed by people on the left in a completely counterproductive way. Mentioning Tulsi Gabbard at all, other than to say she's the best candidate. Apparently that's the only thing that's allowed in some circles. And I also mentioned the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the reaction to the story itself that I did last week was really positive. People saying they respected me for coming clean. People encouraging me to take on these topics because the reactions should and could be respectful. And I want to engage in the battle of ideas. And it's good for the left to figure out things that we are not united about, all of that stuff. So I did. And yesterday I pointed out that I don't think that the Israeli BDS movement is a force that will unite the left. I don't think it's a force that will cause change in Israel or foreign policy. I don't believe it has been effective. And in addition, I believe that it hurts people. It hurts workers. It hurts small businesses, or at least potentially if it worked, although it hasn't been very effective. And really, our gripe is with the right-wing government of Israel. So I did that story yesterday. And the reactions to the segment are now Exhibit A in why I have been avoiding this and other topics on the program. And it has to do with it just being unclear that there's an upside for my sort of audience demographic for dealing with these issues. It is a toxic cesspool of comments. Let's first just start with some comments from the YouTube channel, which we will put up on the screen for you. Some of these have had to be blurred in some areas in order to maintain FCC safety. Israel is a crime state committing an ethnic cleansing. That's all that matters. F its fascist government. You are an effing Jew. You can't BS and pretend that's not relevant. It's a little convenient how you Jews act when it affects Jewish interests. I see you attack whites all the time over trivial S. It doesn't seem to apply to Jews who do wrong, though. That's very obvious. F off, David. You've exposed yourself as a Zionist shill. Crash and burn, you stupid effing cuck. That's just a sampling of YouTube comments, and then, of course, emails, which take it up a notch. I'm only putting up a couple of them. There's much more where this came from, but I can't spend the entire day talking about it. David, I'd respect you more if you just said it how it is. Greedy Jews want the shekels for themselves, so BSD is bad. I guess they mean BDS. You Argentinian shyster, you'll have it to be more clever to convince people to oppose BDS so you can line your pockets like Jews do. Wow. And one other, Jews should be killed and you with them. You fake, shill, faux progressive. Your entire show exists to prop up Israel and to destroy the lives of Palestinians. You should be taken off the air by law or force, which is funny to say that's the goal of the show, given that I've admitted I barely talk about the issue because it seems so counterproductive. So what is it that is at issue here? It's not, can I handle the emails? It's not, am I unable to handle the criticism for what it is? We get 2,000 comments per day and hundreds of emails, and most of them are negative, quite frankly. That's not what this is about. The point is there any contingent or coalition in our audience that benefits from me broaching these topics? If I do a topic that the right hates, but it unites the left, and it makes us better activists, and it makes us come together and understand an issue, okay, there's a reason why it makes sense to do that. If mostly everyone just hates it, maybe this is the wrong lane for my show. Like, is that a possibility? And when I ask that, I don't ask it rhetorically. I'm genuinely coming to you for advice. What do you think? The Tulsi example is a good one. I mean, listen, Tulsi has been polling close to zero for a long time. She's fading out. She's polling 0.8% now or something like that. She'll be out before the September debates or soon thereafter. Does it really make sense for me to do any kind of critique of Tulsi's positions or any more than it does of John Delaney or whoever? Maybe not. Like, maybe it's just not the right lane for the show.
And there you are. Back in a minute. Thank you. The end of Maria, beginning of Stu.
Some nice momentum that we're seeing right here, John. Dow Industrial's up 450 points right now.
That's right. And, I think the market is also sensing that this report is not going to be strong enough to add to inflation risk measurably so the Fed can go ahead, cut rates in June and perhaps thereafter. We don't want to lose sight of the fact that energy prices are way down. The price of oil, less than $60 per barrel. That's got to be a positive for the inflation outlook. And if we get a rising rising labor force participation rate. We have more people entering the labor market, and that too should help prevent wage price pressures from ruining the still benign outlook for price inflation.
Well, I love the fact that oil cracked $60 a barrel, John, but I don't know what the heck's going on in fixed income with the 10-year up 7 basis points right now at 4.2% on the yield there.
Yeah, I can't figure this one out either because of the simple fact that wage growth, despite better than expected jobs growth, wage growth came in a little bit under expectations. And that tells you whether or not the labor market is tightening by enough so that we have reason to worry about inflation. Right now, we do not have such reason.
All right. Look, fantastic conversation, everybody. You cannot miss Jobs Day on Mornings with Maria. That's what we have seen once again in this market. We appreciate everybody's time. Joel Schulman, Joni Biley, Gerald Stewart, Steve Moore, John Lonsky, thank you. Great program this morning. I will see everybody tonight on Maria Bartiromo's Wall Street. Do not miss it. We got a big show, and then I'll see you on Sunday on Fox News. Varney and Company picks it up. David Asman in for Stewart this morning. David, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm David Asman in for Stewart Varney. A big day. We just got the April jobs report, and the market's taking it as very good news. As you can see in the bottom right of your screen, 177,000 jobs in April. This is 40,000, more than 40,000 more than expected. The unemployment rate holding steady at 4.2%. Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer joins us first this morning with reaction and what it means for the economy. Also from Washington, President Donald Trump gearing up to release his 2026 budget proposal. We've got the inside track on what's in it before it heads to Congress. And did China just blink? China now signals openness to trade talks with the United States. Here's the market reaction to it all. We have the Dow up in pre-market activity, 450 points. You can see all the China stocks going up. All of the indices are in the green, and they were given a big push when this jobs number came out. The 10-year, if we can turn to the 10-year yield, it is up a little bit, just a tick, 0.07 basis points. 2-year is up, again, about the same amount, 0.08%, the yield on that. Bitcoin is up a little bit, about $54. Oil trading down a little bit. It is still under $60 at $59. A relatively large jump in gold. It's up $31.50 an ounce. And on the tech front, Apple beat on revenue, but its services division missed the mark. CEO Tim Cook also said tariffs could add $900 million to Apple's costs this quarter. He also revealed Apple is shifting production of iPhones sold in the U.S. from China to India and Vietnam. And Amazon's outlook is strong, but cloud growth is slowing. On the show today, we are live at Churchill Downs. Just weeks after historic floods, local businesses are betting on the Kentucky Derby to bring a lot of much-needed relief. We even caught up with Bob Baffert, and yes, we asked him about the horse named Varney. There is a horse running named Varney. And in Miami, it's the Super Bowl of auto racing. The Grand Prix, Formula One, roars back for a fourth year. We're going to be talking to Mayor Francis Suarez later in the show. It is Friday, May 2nd. Varney and Company is about to begin.
And that was Varney and Company, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing, mean? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, if you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 19 of 3,000 Degrees.
19. Mike steered his gold Buick around the long way to the far end of Franklin Street, avoiding the avenues that the police had blocked off. It was early, about 9 o'clock Sunday morning, almost 40 hours after the first alarm rang for Worcester cold storage. As he drove down a long hill, he could see the warehouse smoldering beneath him, a pall of yellow-gray smoke held low to the ground under an unusually bright December sky. Fire and brimstone, he thought. The building from hell. Joanne sat next to him. She eyed the building, remembered when Mike had told her how badly it scared him. She wondered if it had known, if the warehouse itself was alive and malevolent, if it had been stalking her husband, her friends, all those men. She watched the steam and the smoke pulse out of the ruins. It was breathing, hissing at her. "It's a devil," she muttered. She hardened her glare. "That building's a devil." She decided she would stare it down, stand on the street, and watch it finally die. Mike parked the Buick 50 yards from the warehouse and walked the rest of the way to the command post in the parking lot opposite the AB corner of the building. He wasn't scheduled to work, and in his jeans and sweatshirt he wasn't dressed for it. But he'd been drawn to the building, compelled to be there when his men were finally found. He'd stowed his gear, boots, coat, pants, helmet, in the trunk of the Buick. Most of the B wall had been torn down, and part of the A wall, opening a gaping wound in the corner of the warehouse. He leaned against the chain-link fence, folded his arms across his chest, and stared at the wreckage. The devastation was immense and thorough, an isolated landscape from Dresden or Berlin, something he'd only seen in black-and-white war footage. Charred timbers, big as maples, jutted up at sharp angles through mangled coils of refrigeration piping and tangles of wire and heaps of shattered concrete, all of it covered with slushy cinders. Near the center wall, men played streams of water on spot fires and flare-ups, and the steam hung over the detritus like white flax smoke. And that was only half of it. The rest of the building lay behind the firewall, waiting to be exposed. They were all dead. Mike had suspected that since Friday night, but now he was certain. The warehouse had become a crematorium, its thick shell holding in the heat, its insides disintegrating, crumbling, melting. For a few deadly hours, the building had functioned like the wood stove in his kitchen, air flowing into a combustion chamber, alchemizing into fire, exhausting through the chimney. Yet the destruction was contained in the firebox, a controlled burn that never spread to the counters or the china hutch. When the logs had been consumed, Mike swept out the ash. His men would be sweeping ash from Worcester cold storage. He watched a dozen men scramble across the jumble on the deck, which is what the second floor, where the others had collapsed, was called. The search for bodies was a deliberate process, conducted in carefully organized phases to both preserve any evidence of arson and to retrieve human remains. After the two exterior walls had been pulled down, the men divided the deck into sections. They did a surface search first, walking through the debris, stepping around beams and loose bricks, scanning for a hose, a helmet, a badge, anything that might reveal a body. Then, cranes lifted away the largest pieces of wreckage and deposited them on Franklin Street. After another surface search, the loose material was scooped out with a clamshell bucket and piled in the street. Firemen raked through the mounds, picking out the larger pieces, spreading the rest out to look for clues and remains. The smaller fragments were sifted through a screen of half-inch mesh, and finally, quarter-inch mesh. It was filthy and miserable work, picking through wet ashes and warm bricks under a raw December sky. The men were wet and sore and grieving, and a few were suffering wounds from the firefight on Friday night. Robert A. had sucked in so much smoke, had scarred his throat so badly that he couldn't speak, and wouldn't be able to for another 6 weeks. Mike Coakley ignored the sharp ache stabbing at his chest, the result of 3 ribs he'd torn out of place. But every man from the Worcester Fire Department wanted to be on the deck, his fingers blistered and chapped, scraping through the ruins for his comrades. When the crane swung the bucket clear, the officer in charge on the deck would yell, "Go!" and every man would scurry across the deck and dig like mad. Ho meant clear the area, that the crane was coming back, that men shouldn't be lingering in its path. Mike noticed no one moved as quickly getting out of the way. An hour after Mike arrived, a few minutes after 10 o'clock, one of the deputy chiefs ambled up to him. "Mike, I hate to do this to you," Walter Giard said, "but we need you. We could really use you up there." Mike jerked away from the fence. "Absolutely," he said. "I just didn't know how you wanted to work this, if you wanted the regular shifts working. But I've got my gear in the car." He turned toward his Buick, took a step. A flicker in his peripheral vision, all the men on the deck converging on a single point, like bees to a hive. He wheeled, sprinted toward the warehouse. "What's going on?" he asked the first man he saw. "We got one." Mike ran up Franklin Street, flung open the trunk, kicked off his civilian shoes. He stepped into his bunker pants, rammed his feet into his boots, and started running back toward the warehouse, pulling his coat on between strides, the heavy gear slowing his pace. He went to the B-wall, near where the overhead doors were hidden behind the rubble, and hustled up a long yellow ladder that angled up to the deck. The other men were gathered approximately halfway between the remnants of the B-wall and the firewall, but closer to the front, the Franklin Street side. Mike reconstructed the building from memory. The stairwell, the only exit down from the 5th floor, was about 30 feet away. The man they'd found had been only 10 big steps away from getting out alive. Scorched mortar crunched under Mike's boots. He noticed the side had fallen church quiet. The rumbling crane shut down. The hissing hoses switched off. It was difficult to see the corpse, to separate it from the burnt shards surrounding and partially covering it. Men dug gently, lifting pieces of rubble aside, careful not to disturb the remains more than necessary. Fire did ugly things to the human body, private things, damage that no one should be forced or maybe even allowed to see. When it was one of their own, privacy was even more important. Below, at the corner of Arctic and Franklin, the aluminum ladder from the back of Tommy Spencer's truck, Ladder 2, slowly extended into the air. 3 men climbed out on it with massive tarps. They draped them over the stick, secured them with rope, let them hang in the still and smoky air like a giant curtain, blocking the view into the warehouse. It took 15 minutes to untangle the body from the debris. Up close, seeing how big the man was, most of the men guessed they'd found Tim Jackson. A body bag and a stretcher were brought to the deck. The remains were freed, then tenderly packed into the black plastic bag. District Chief Larry Mulry blinked back tears as the bag was placed on the stretcher. "No," he said. "He's not going down in that fucking body bag. No one's going to see him like that." Worcester firemen had no protocol for recovering their own dead. They were improvising, cribbing from terrible scenes they'd witnessed somewhere else, Boston, New York, and Chicago. But no one argued with Chief Mulry. The men waited on the deck, behind the drape hanging from Ladder 2, until a red firehouse blanket was brought up to cover Tim's body. Then 4 men from his station, Grove Street, lifted the stretcher and carried it toward the B-wall. Mike walked in front, leading the procession. At the edge of the deck, a second ladder had been placed parallel to the first, and firemen from Grove Street and Central Street passed the stretcher to the ground. At the bottom, the rest of the firemen, paramedics, and police officers stood in 2 lines, forming a corridor that led from the base of the warehouse to the ambulance. A reverend waited partway down the line to say a prayer over the body. Then Mike led them to the ambulance, where the men slid the stretcher inside. From the moment his body had been found, only Worcester firemen touched Timmy Jackson's body. For hours, the search focused in the same area, the clamshell bucket closing, rising, swinging away, men monkeying back to the dig site. There should have been another body nearby. Firemen worked in pairs, would have clung to each other in the dark. But there was no one else beneath that particular mound of debris. Tim might have become separated from Tom Spencer in the roaring black. Or he might have died somewhere else, closer to the firewall or more toward the center of the building, and his corpse slid to its eventual position as each of the floors collapsed. No one knew, had no way of knowing. So they dug deeper, through 10 feet of debris. Mike stayed on the deck through most of the morning and into the afternoon. An hour or so before dusk, he climbed down to Franklin Street to rest. Near the fence surrounding the parking lot across the street, he saw one of the men from the fire investigations unit. "You guys got any idea how this started?" Mike asked the investigator. He looked to either side, made sure no civilians or reporters were within earshot. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We got 2 people, and we got confessions from both of them. But keep it quiet. We aren't releasing it yet." Mike nodded. He had only one question. Was it intentional? The investigator shook his head. "No," he said. "It doesn't appear so." Finding Tom Levesque and Julianne Barnes hadn't taken long. Early Friday night, before the evacuation signal was sounded, 2 detectives from the Worcester Police Department's arson squad, Michael Sabatalo and Michael Mulvey, canvassed the bystanders and onlookers, ferreting out witnesses. One of the people they spoke to was Bill McNeil, who ran an all-night diner called Bill's Place on the corner of Franklin and Grafton Streets, on the other side of the highway from Worcester Cold Storage. Bill had told the police early on that homeless people lived in the warehouse. By Saturday morning, he was racked with guilt, convinced, wrongly, that none of the firemen would have gone into the building if he'd kept his mouth shut. For the next week, he fed any man who asked for free. When the detectives came to see him Friday night, Bill gave them 2 names, Tom Levesque, who he'd hired to wash dishes for a few weeks the previous summer, and Julianne Barnes. Sabatalo and Mulvey found them both the following morning, Saturday, and in separate interviews, they both told essentially the same story. Tom had wanted to have sex, they argued, then struggled, a candle tipped, the fire spread, they left. The only difference was what time all that had happened. Tom said about 4:30, but Julie thought it was about 6 o'clock. They weren't arrested right away, though, and hadn't been by Sunday afternoon. The detectives were still building their case. They talked to Scott, a man Julie dated for a few weeks in September. He confirmed that Tom and Julie had lived in the warehouse and described the squalid office where they kept their bed, the heater, and the candles. They talked to Bruce, with whom Julie was staying in room 410 at the Regency Suites Hotel in Maine South. He knew about the fire because the window in his room faced the orange glow searing the sky above the highway. He said that Julie watched the fire with him. Mike listened to the rough outlines of the story. "Son of a bitch," he muttered. Maybe it would have been better if the building had been torched, if an arsonist had lit it up for insurance or revenge. Then there would have been a villain, a bona fide criminal, a murderer. There would have been someone to blame. Instead, there was only a pair of vagrants, pathetic, almost pitiable. He could imagine them, unwashed and disheveled, tussling amid the filth in the warehouse. If they'd reported it earlier, if Tom was right and the fire had burned for almost 2 hours before the first alarm rang, would it have made a difference? Mike was sure it would have. But the worst thing they'd done was run away. Mike couldn't help but wonder whether 6 of his men were dead because 2 misfits were too scared to dial 911. He shook his head as he walked away. "Son of a bitch," he said again. "What a stupid, stupid thing." Emily McGurk understood why her daddy couldn't come home yet. She had figured out exactly what had happened, and she wasn't happy about it, but she understood, and she was very proud of her father. She knew there had been a bad fire in a warehouse, and that her father had gone into the building with his friend Jay Lyons. When they were inside, Jay got hurt. Her father would never leave his friend alone, especially if he was hurt. So that's why he hadn't come home. He was in the warehouse, next to Jay, waiting for the other firemen to dig them free. Joe McGurk had been gone a long time, though, almost 4 days. Emily hadn't seen her father since she kissed him at the bottom of the stairs on Friday afternoon. Her mother had let her sleep with her and Everett every night, the 3 of them curled together in Linda's bed. That helped a little, but she was still upset. "I'm so worried about Daddy," she told her mom on Tuesday, "because now he's missed breakfast and lunch and dinner and breakfast and lunch and dinner and breakfast and lunch and dinner and breakfast. That's," she counted, added everything up, 4 breakfasts and 3 lunches and 3 dinners. Linda hugged her daughter, pulled her close. "I know," she whispered in her ear. "I'm worried about Daddy, too." When the sun went down, banks of heavy-duty lights threw a lunar white shine across the deck. The timbers and coils and men broke the light, cast strange shadows onto the rubble and the remnants of the walls. The searching continued around the clock, all through the night, stopping only once before dawn on Monday, when it appeared the firewall might topple down, 80 feet of bricks and mortar crashing onto the deck. The digging started again the next morning, after a giant crane removed the wall. 5 men were still missing. There had been no other body near Tim Jackson. 2 dogs, trained to find cadavers, prowled the ruins now, their snouts low, near the ash, sniffing. Every so often, one of them would loiter over a certain spot, then take a step backward and sit, the signal that she had smelled something human. The men would focus on that area, scooping with small hand trowels and their fingers. But they found only bits of canvas hose, nozzles, scraps of leather, items that had only been touched by humans. After almost 3 days of painstaking excavation, the men were increasingly frustrated. Yet they still jockeyed for shifts on the deck. No one wanted to quit. Tom Levesque and Julianne Barnes were in jail. They'd been picked up that day, Tuesday, and arraigned earlier in the afternoon on 6 counts each of involuntary manslaughter. They shuffled into a courtroom only a half-mile from the warehouse, Levesque, gaunt and scruffy, briefly lifting his hands to shield his face, then dropping them, realizing the gesture was futile or uncomfortable, or both. Barnes stood close by his side, her mouth drooping into a defeated frown, a white ribbon knotted in her mousy brown hair. They were being charged under the legally vaporous theory that their failure to report the fire made them criminally responsible for the deaths of 6 men. Under Massachusetts law, however, that wasn't necessarily a crime. After pleading not guilty, the judge set bail at $1 million each. Barnes was sent to the state prison for women in Framingham, which was standard for female prisoners, and Levesque was shipped to the Middlesex County Jail in Cambridge, which was not at all standard. But it was safer. Worcester is a small city. Too many jail guards knew at least one of the 6 dead firemen. At the warehouse, no one celebrated the arrests. Nothing had changed. Like Mike McNamee, most of the firemen were more frustrated than angry. Chief Dennis Budd spoke for most of them when he told the local paper he wasn't seething with rage. "I have no time for that," he said. "I feel grief right now." Paul Brotherton and Jerry Lucy went deep into the building because conditions allowed it, and that was their job. Maybe the building wouldn't have turned so deadly so quickly if Levesque or Barnes had called earlier, or maybe it would have. And Tom Spencer, Tim Jackson, Jay Lyons, and Joe McGurk still would have gone in to find Paul and Jerry. Now they had to get them out, bring their brothers home. The search area had shifted forward toward the Franklin Street side, and about 20 more feet toward the firewall, into one of the worst sections of the building. When the fire was at its zenith, state police hovered above in a helicopter with a device that measured the temperatures below. Where the men were digging had been one of the hottest spots, soaring to more than 3,000 degrees. Bodies are cremated at 1,800. Cast iron melts at 2,800. Everything in the front of Worcester Cold Storage should have been vaporized. Then they found something. Just before 8 o'clock, a hand went up, waved everyone over. Some pieces of equipment, the outer gear. Men got down on their knees and dug, determined and rapid, but still delicate, precise, none of them wanting to overlook anything important. Bricks were lifted aside. Ashes and cinders and crumbled cork were troweled away, inch by inch. A glint of silver through the sludge. A medallion, the size of a quarter, with pieces of a fine looped chain attached to it. An icon of St. Florian, the word stamped into the metal, "Protect us." They'd found Jay Lyons. His medallion was sterling silver, which has a melting point of 1,600 degrees. Every man there knew what St. Florian had told his tormentors. "If you burn me, I will climb to heaven on the flames." And in the cold of a December night, they believed it was true.
And that was chapter 19 of the book 3,000 Degrees, a true story of a deadly fire and the men who fought it, by Sean Flynn, and there's 35 minutes left in the book. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that determinism is optional.